Big piece of spring intel coming out of Florida as the Gators are reporting that Zach Goodall, from Swamp 24/7 is saying that DJ Lagway has not thrown yet at camp as he deals with a lingering leg and shoulder issues. Billy Napier spoke to the media about how he plans to handle his star quarterback ahead of a potential make-or-break season in 2024.
Our intentions here are to be very smart. I do think he'll be limited in throwing activities, but he'll participate in all practices otherwise. And we've done a lot of homework here relative to the things that he went through as a player. I mean, he was an absolute warrior and a great competitor that showed toughness. And we've consulted with quite a few experts here from a UFL, from a national perspective, as we do with a lot of our players, in terms of second opinion. So I think in general, he'll be able to do quite a bit, but there will be some limitations.
A lot of tiptoeing there from head coach Billy Napier. I think he's trying to rationalize it in his head where DJ Lagway is with the shoulder injury, with the hamstring injury he battled a little bit last year. He said it. He's a warrior. He's tough. I don't know, Smoke, your biggest takeaway on what you heard there from Billy Napier.
Coop, on a scale from 1 to 10 on my concern meter, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, I'm at a 6 right now. And here's the reason why, Coop. Throughout that entire conversation, or him on the podium, we didn't hear a clear diagnosis. We didn't hear it was a labrum or scope or just wear and tear. And then we didn't hear a plan. Is he going to throw week 2? Are they going to ramp it up to week 3? And when you're looking at the reason why Florida got Billy Napier into this season, it's the one guy's arm, the right shoulder of DJ Lagway, and the legs of DJ. So 7 games in, we saw what we knew. That guy's a good player. But how is he building, not going out there and throwing it to those 2 dynamic receivers, the Wilson boys?
And it all depends on DJ Lagway. I think the other part about this, you and I were talking before the show, he's a dominant upper body thrower. The biggest thing where he was really going to have to make the transition and continue to develop is his footwork. And obviously he can get away with so much. But you think about DJ Lagway, what he meant and what he means to Billy Napier and the success that they had last season. A lot of people thought Florida Billy Napier were dead in the water. I think that's really kind of the way they were trending before Graham Mertz got hurt. DJ Lagway comes in 5-2 over that span, 8-5, new life heading into the offseason. But Smoke, a shoulder injury, like I said, lower extremity as well. Jesse Myers, our producer, he kind of talked about it. He's a Lambo, right? And if any part of the engine starts to break down a little bit, everything else around him could fall.
Coop, second opinion. That's what we just heard. So that means the people that you've employed, meaning Billy Napier, you couldn't figure out what's going on with him. So therefore, you look at it and say, okay, we can't throw. Continuity's kind of thrown off. There's a lot of things that he needs to change mechanically with his upper body, with his lower body, going from his toes to his fingertips and understanding how to throw the ball with his lower body. So if you're going into year 2, not getting that done in the spring, and again, it's spring. Season not starting tomorrow. You still have the summertime. But I am concerned that the continuity that he needs to build and just the growth that he needs as a second-year quarterback is kind of being delayed.
And what's that plan B look like? Harrison Bailey, a guy that's played for a couple different schools already, started his career Tennessee, bounced around, went to UNLV, went to Louisville as well. Spring portal in April. If they don't like what they see from Harrison Bailey, maybe the Gators turn that way. Still early, right? We've talked about that. We'll see what happens with DJ Lagway, but concerning nonetheless as we keep our eyes in Gainesville. Why we're talking about concerns about quarterbacks, one guy that's been the topic of conversation, especially in NFL circles, is Shedeur Sanders. Louis Riddick of ESPN made his thoughts clear on how Shedeur Sanders is facing unwarranted backlash ahead of the NFL draft. Riddick says that's where it starts. It doesn't even start with Shedeur. This starts with his father, and it trickles down to him. With Shedeur, he has some of his father in him. How could he not? He's the man's son. So a lot of it comes from who he is and what his last name is. Smoke, you are in the unique position of a guy that has worked not only in the collegiate game, but you've been in a lot of these NFL draft meetings during your time with the Buffalo Bills. You said it. You read a lot of character reports, a lot of those character reports being on quarterback. So I want to ask you the simple question. Do you feel like Shedeur Sanders is being characterized fairly, not only by the NFL media, but the teams maybe that have one of those top 10 picks or teams that are considering drafting him? Is this a guy that's getting an unfair rap right now?
Absolutely unfair. And every single year, Coop, we all sit back and you see one quarterback, most of the time the black quarterback, that gets torn down with his character. Let's look at last year. Caleb got ripped apart for doing the same things that Jaden Daniels did. Showed up to the combine, didn't do anything, walked away. But he got torn apart. So this is normal behavior for the guys that are inside looking out and understanding that you are going to get your character ripped down. But I always ask the question whenever I read a character. Is he a criminal? Have we heard anything from his past schools? Jackson State, nothing. Colorado, nothing. Any off-the-field incidents? Zero. So is he getting torn down for being an arrogant guy or a confident guy that you want? We know that you're always treading on that line of saying, okay, I want my quarterback to be that alpha male. Well, if you're an alpha male, you got to walk around with that Brahma Bill shoulder of saying, whatever you put me in, whatever situation you put me in, I'm going to get through it. And that's all Shedeur's done. So he's only speaking of his truth. And again, we got to understand who his daddy is. That guy's walked around feeling like he is the best in the world. So I can't change who I am. NFL teams, get ready for this is what I'm going to be.
You had some really interesting player comps, and not from a play style standpoint, more from like a psychological behavior type of style. Guys that you wouldn't think about. Josh Rosen was one of those guys. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. On the extreme side, we talked a little bit about Baker Mayfield, the rap that he had. You said it didn't make a lot of sense to you because you saw the player one way in terms of the behavior, the clear behavior that you saw out of Baker Mayfield in college versus then, all right, well, how was that being perceived by NFL evaluators? I just wonder, for me, what I think is at the heart of this is you have teams picking in the top 10 for a reason. You also have NFL evaluators across the board. This is not a unanimous top 10 pick. It's not a unanimous day one selection either. So I think what happens here, we heard a little bit about this conversation at the NFL Combine, that Shedeur Sanders was turning off a lot of people in his pre-draft interviews. I think a lot of it comes from you've been on the other side, I've been on the other side. When there is a player that you're on the fence about and you say, you know what, I like this guy, I'm not in love with him, but everything's kind of got to be right for the water to be warm for us to continue in this direction together as a relationship. But how much am I really going to put up with off the field in terms of a strong personality, the confidence, maybe the stuff that's a little off-putting, that's going to make people uncomfortable in the building? And I think that's what you have, that dichotomy at the top of the board is some people saying, hey, listen, we're not in love with Shedeur Sanders. We need a quarterback. It'd be ideal if he checked all those boxes. But there's a lot of stuff here that maybe we're not comfortable with on a guy that we actually have a day 2 grade on, that if we're going to talk ourselves into picking in the top 10, everything else has to be right. How much of that do you think kind of plays into the conversation?
Well, with talent comes tolerance. And you said it. He's a solid player. He's not a once-in-a-generational, franchise, top-of-the-board, can't-miss Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Caleb Williams type of athlete. So, yes, you can be on the fence. And we've been in rooms, recruiting rooms, draft rooms, where one scout or one coach really got rubbed the wrong way by this player. And they don't want him. So what they're doing, they're just trying to find, how can I sway this vote and push the narrative of, you know what, in our building, we don't need that. But how do you know that you don't need that? Some point, and sometimes, Coop, being uncomfortable is really the comfortability that you need to change whatever you have going around, because most of these teams aren't winning. So why don't you want to bring in a winner with a winning type attitude? That's going to rub people the wrong way, but might rub them the right way in terms of W's.
I want to talk about something real quick. He has the latitude. He's in a unique situation. You brought up the Mannings. You talk about football royalty. You also talk about Deion Sanders. And let's talk about the path of a Shedeur a little bit. A lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, he's entitled. He's Deion Sanders' son. You think about Shedeur and where he came from. This was a guy that was ranked as a high 3-star, decided to follow his dad to Jackson State, played there, played at a really high level. He then goes to Colorado, one of the worst teams, a doormat of Power 4 football, absolute embarrassment. Goes there, 4-8 in the first season, 9-4 in the last season. So we talked about it with Adam Munster Tiger on this show, talking about the legacy that Shedeur Sanders has built for the University of Colorado. You think about the legacy that he's left. He is a winner. He's also, like Louis Riddick alluded to, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
At all.
He's a lot like his father, and why wouldn't you be? There's an extreme amount of confidence there. I think the other part about this is, as you and I know, it says a lot about the teams picking at the top of the draft. There has to be some type of individual that's going through this and saying, hold on, what are we so insecure about? We're picking in the top 5, top 10 for a reason. We're losers. This guy believes that he's a winner, right? And some of it's circumstantial, but this guy and what he breeds, we got to be okay with that. We also have to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and understand, hey, there's going to be some things here that maybe tolerate. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's going to have to be some hard conversations, and we're going to have the right personnel that is going to have to be able to answer to and explain to a Gold Jacket Hall of Famer like Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders why we're doing the things that we're doing. So that being said, everybody wants a player to look, feel, talk, walk a certain way. That's typically more of a projection on the evaluator, the decision maker who has insecurity with somebody who's incredibly confident within themselves.
Yeah, cool. What you just described, you check through the history of coaches that are playing well and winning quarterbacks. You take a quarterback that started out of the program that was this blah, 3-star, goes to that program, turns it around, winner. Go to another P4 conference team, Colorado. They only won a couple of games. You win +3 your first year because you won 4 games. Then you take it to 9. So if I'm an NFL team, regardless, let's not talk about the skill set. Let's talk about the mindset of this player. Isn't that the player that you want to come into your building with a struggling organization that's been losing, that needs somebody to come in that's done this before, that understands what that feels like, what that looks like, what that tastes like on an everyday basis? So yes, it might be some confidence, but it's the right confidence that you need injected into your organization in order to win.
Yeah, real quick, you can say a lot of things about Shedeur Sanders. Went into a really difficult situation. They overturned that roster. Tough as hell. That offensive line wasn't really good. You think about what he's dealt with the last 2 years. He has elevated the guys around him. That's what you want in a quarterback. He's got a supreme amount of confidence as well. Guess what? Guys that are coaching him, you better be really confident in your skill set too. That's what it takes to be around winners. Last time I checked, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady weren't sending each other Christmas cards either.